Well, good afternoon and good morning, depending on which time zone you're in. We're going to give it one more minute and then we'll get started. Give it some time for everyone to join in. Thanks for joining us today. All right, we're at 12:01 Eastern. We'll get started. We've got an action-packed hour here. Appreciate everybody jumping in. This is episode 4 of our Fuel Up series webinar. And today we're going to be talking landscape business management. A look at the past, a look at the present, and a look at the future as well. So we've got a great panel again with us this week. We've got Jordan from Yardnique, who's their CRO. We've got Glenn Popieski from BrightView, who is their vice president. And then we have Nick Gage from Maldonado down there in Texas, who is the president of their commercial construction division. So appreciate everybody joining in today. So I'm going to ask them to do a little round of intros, and then we'll get started on our conversation. Just to lay a little bit of groundwork agenda-wise today, we're going to spend our first 45 minutes having a discussion about business management, how that looks, and go through the years over the past 20 years to present to future. And then we're going to take 15 minutes at the end, do a Q&A session. So you'll have access to the chat function to be able to ask any questions as we go through. So I ask you, if we're walking through anything in particular that it spurs a question in your mind, go ahead and drop that into the chat and we'll capture those, and we'll take care of those towards the end of our webinar. One other housekeeping item, we're going to have a few polls, 3 to be exact, that come up. Those polls, for the most part, are multiple choice. You can have multiple answers to those, but it'd be great if you could interact there a little bit with us as we bring those polls up as well. So Jordan, I'll ask you to get us started with an intro, and then we'll move through.
Absolutely. Thank you, Shawn. Jordan Henderson, CRO for the Yardnique family of companies, and have been with the company for 2.5 years now, with about 6 years total in the green industry. And I'm super excited to be on the panel today and appreciate you inviting me. And I'm happy to be here along with Nick and Glenn.
Awesome. Thanks, Jordan. Appreciate that. Glenn, let's move over to you.
I appreciate that, Shawn. And Glenn Popieski, in a role of a vice president here at BrightView Landscapes today. And I've been in the industry for a little over 25 years in one capacity or another. And then with this here, through a couple different acquisitions, just for about 24 years. So excited to be a part of the call and share, kind of what we know and answer any questions that come up, Shawn. So thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for being with us today, Glenn. Appreciate it. Nick, we'll move over to you.
Sounds great. Nick Gage with Maldonado Nursery and Landscaping. We've been in business 35 years throughout the state of Texas. I'm the president of commercial construction. I've been in the industry over 25 years. Started as a landscape architect and been in the green industry and touching construction since then. So thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Nick. Thanks, Glenn. Thanks, Jordan. Appreciate those intros. Let's hop right into it conversation-wise. We really got 3 points, and they're really structured around the past, the present, and the future, specific and in the vein of business management for the landscaping and green industry. So, Nick, I'll stay with you here to get us kick-started. So it'd be good. Maybe let's give a glimpse of the past, right? How do business management software, business management systems look, let's just say the past, 15 to 20 years ago? Any specific tools or processes that you can remember from when you were first getting started in the industry?
Sure. No, it's a great question. I have the grayest hair on here, so I'm sure it's the best one for me. But, I was really thinking about this, and, early on in my career, like the estimating takeoff side of our business, it used to be paper plans and scale masters, digitizers was kind of that next evolution, and you were being progressive at that point. And I'm sure some on the call don't even know what the digitizers are. Those are those big white desks in your office that are plans stacked on them probably now. And then it, evolved to like heads up on screen takeoff software where each user had it at their desktop and and it was digital takeoffs. And now, we're exploring AI automated blueprint takeoffs and working on how that flows into estimating software. So that's just one example that I've seen evolve. Another great example is we all have crews out there running around, and we all originally started with paper timesheets. Now we've got digital clock in with facial recognition and really understand with geofencing and those type of things. It's a really exciting time in the industry and how technology is really evolved how we approach our operations on a daily basis.
Yeah, great inputs there, Nick. As you're talking about paper timesheets, I'm remembering my paper timesheets getting stuck in the fax machine as I faxed them from my satellite office back to our administrator as well. And shoot, that process of just getting that information to where it needed to be sometimes took me, 30 or 45 minutes every Monday morning. Some would say I should have been doing timesheets daily, though. Some people, right?
Definitely.
No, that's good deal. Glenn, I'll move over to you here. I'd love to get your perspective as well, just on maybe some past processes, whether that be manual sales processes or manual tracking or production processes or things along those lines.
Yeah, I think Shawn, and I listening to Nick, right? I mean, there's the paper timesheet, but I think back to when we had I'll call them carbon sheets, right, where you wrote on the top sheet and hopefully copied to the second sheet. And if you weren't fancy enough to have the ones that had it built in, right, you're looking around for who had the extra piece of carbon paper. And that's kind of how we might do, maybe it was inventory management or even just pull tickets for like a snow removal operation and so forth. But that obviously, and I thinking back to the days of communication and business management, right, and how did we get the information from that paper print or that contract for what work needed to be done in the field by the crew? How did we get it to them? And it could be either handwritten or ultimately it became stale, and it became stale quick. So I think we'll get there, but ultimately, like, how it's gone and where it's come from is pretty interesting piece. But
yeah, absolutely. I remember a lot of was the binders, right? I've seen different colors of binders in trucks and trailers, and is it the red binder, is it the green binder, or are we doing blue binders for snow, that type of thing. So a lot of opportunity when it was a process we needed then, and we needed to be able to communicate that information. So I look at that as the foundation of maybe where we are today and where we're headed. Jordan, I'd love to get maybe some input from you. Any nostalgia on old processes and things we used to do back when?
So I really think about the process holistically, right? So all the way from sales to operations, and then our back end processes, including like accounting, right? And the way that we go about all of those things has drastically changed so much. I mean, I think as Nick alluded to, we had in the past folks out there with a wheel out measuring. Now you have different products and systems that can measure for you aerially and spit out, hey, you have this many square feet of turf in the area. In addition to that, from the sales side, the AI side of sales is going to drastically be ramping up and changing and helping the sales team be able to move a lot faster than what they have been able to in the past, where I think previously sales was all about, being on foot, making those cold calls on the phone, which I don't think you'll ever replace doing that in the sales process. But certain versions of AI that are out there that can help you write scripts, and those things are really going to impact how quickly sales are happening in the business. So I think going from some of the, what I call like legal notepad, right, where you'd be out on a job and you'd write everything down on a notepad. Now you can take pictures, you can add those into your systems, and that's making us move in a lot faster. And it's also helping us be a lot more accurate in what we're able to put together, from the sales side over to the operations teams, which should then lead to more efficiencies when our ops teams are out on site.
Yeah, I think two key points I just heard from you, Jordan, was faster and more accurate. A lot of times those don't necessarily go together. Sometimes you become
Right.
less accurate the quicker you go. So I definitely think technology is helping us with that for sure. It's funny because you mentioned, the legal pad. In my mind, I always think legal pad, yellow pad so much. Like if I rewind and think about my career 20 years ago, man, the amount of stuff I put on a yellow pad, whether it was snow takeoff information, production plan, calendar. I mean, that's where it lived when I first started in the industry. You feel the same?
Yeah. I mean, and listen, there are companies out there now that are still utilizing that system, right? You go visit a company and say, hey, show me how you're calculating your either production rates or your estimation for this particular whatever, and they'll say, oh, it's right here on my notepad. And those folks have so much knowledge, right? The knowledge of how to estimate and how to look at a property and say, oh, that property is 50 grand and it's going to take 100 yards of mulch. It's all up here, right? Eventually those folks are going to want to be able to retire someday. So how do we take that information that's living in the head of those people that are so incredibly smart and get it out and be able to teach the next generation? And that's where I think a lot of this technology that's coming into our industry specifically is going to help us continue to evolve.
Yeah, well said there. I think I always think back, right, when the first thing that popped in my head when we were fleshing out or outlining, our agenda for this webinar was, the takeoff process. Back in the day, there was a wheel, but the other piece of that was it was that yellow pad, right? And you learned real quick if you were in a northern climate and you were out in the field doing measurements with that yellow pad, you didn't have a pen because the pen would freeze up, right? And a lot of times that's when takeoffs would get done in seasonal markets, was in the wintertime, just because that's when the buying cycle is, right? And you learned real quick that you needed a pencil instead of a pen, that type of thing. So I was revisiting that in my mind of like, man, how far we've come from the 20 plus years ago to maybe where we're at today. Awesome. Well, good. Maybe, Glenn, I'd like to maybe pivot a little bit now and talk a little bit more about the present, what that looks like from business management, software systems, things that we're doing today, and maybe draw some contrast to, how those are better to what we were doing before. So anything initially cross your mind there for what's going on today?
No, I think, we've all said it here, like there's a lot of pieces and parts that go into what we do on the daily. And it's thinking about it from start to finish of, we have a prospect, or we have a customer that we want to go after, to the fact that we have to deliver the service. There's so many pieces and parts along the way that, and ultimately the communication of it and the delivery of it is the critical part that our team needs to see the information, right? And ultimately be able to execute upon that. And I think to Jordan's part about, hey, what's in my head or what's on my yellow notepad versus, maybe hers or the next person's. And so I think that the information that's out there in today's business management is a lot quicker, right? And it can get from one person to the next person a little bit better. And with all that being said, it's also a matter of we've probably heard it, right? Garbage in, garbage out. And if we go too quick, it's not good information. And strictly, it can be as easy as, hey, what's the phone number you call, or what's the address that you go to? Technology today, I think, helps eliminate some of that, right? I mean, we put an address in and it puts us pretty much on the right job site. And I think with regards to like estimating too, right? It's a matter of, we can put it in, we confirm, where it is that we're trying to look at. And then ultimately that map is generated. It can be given to the team. It can, the group that goes out. But with all that being said too, I think there's one underlying factor is, outside of the data being good or the information being good, it's the people or the team that's working with it, from all aspects of it. And if we want to deliver that end piece, the best product at the end, we got to make sure that the front end, and that's the team that's going out to do it, has what they need. So I think when it comes to business management, things are a lot quicker, Shawn. You can get the information, you can do the comparative analysis, maybe I'll say easier, right? Or just a lot of different ways. But again, it all starts with, hey, what do we put in on day one to kind of drive it? So that's kind of where I'd start or leave it for the minute,
Yeah, no, well said, Glenn. I think just real quick, we'll pause. We'll be popping up a poll here. Feel free to interact with that, and by all means, drop any questions into the chat as we go. Want to cover what you mentioned there, Glenn, was, I got 2 points out of it, right? You've got to have data integrity, right? Because if you've got garbage going into the system, it's not going to be good coming out the other end. But I mean, really the crux of it, I always find it interesting, right? We talk about technology and we talk about how it impacts the business. And this is, past 10 years have been large strides in our industry in regards to injecting technology into our workflows and what we do. But at the end of the day, right, it's our team members that are out there performing that work that technology is enabling, essentially. So I think that's a fantastic point. We can shove as much tech into a company as we want, but it needs to be the right technology, and it needs to be simple enough that our teams can actually enable it out in the field. Does that sum up what you were saying there?
Yeah, I think you're spot on, and without answering the poll, right? I mean, I think it has to be the right information for the team that's doing the work. And if we want them to be able to perform well, and have fun doing it, then yeah, we gotta make sure that we get after that and make it, ease and have good communication. So yeah.
Yeah, well said. Nick, maybe any other thoughts from what the path Glenn was guiding us down there?
Yeah, at our organization, we've been an early adopter of technology the whole time, always looking for that technology advantage. And the reason is, the labor force, it's a challenge to find quality team members. There's a shortage of team members out there to help grow the organization with the volume of work that's out there. And we're aggressively growing company, and so we're looking at how we can use our current resources and with the leverage of technology to do more, with less people, and that's all the way from systems, and that's, I think, one of the big challenges in the business management space right now is there are a lot of systems and how they integrate, and we're building open APIs and bridges to make all this work, and we're moving towards a platform where it's just one end-to-end system that makes a huge difference. It streamlines the operation, so everything from the estimating side to the pre-construction side, all the way to operations, from how are we really performing on the job costing side, and then ending up, how do we close the job out? Jobs are really easy to start, but closing a job out and getting all your warranties and checklists done and all those type of things where you end well is, creates that recurring business. So getting all that mapped and where it flows and those type of things are where we're as an organization, we're spending a lot of our energy right now and trying to wrestle with those challenges that technology has brought into our industry.
Yeah, that's well said, Nick. I think too, there's maybe an added layer of complexity, especially for the area you operate in with commercial construction. There's just, you mentioned those checklists and schedule values and just, I mean, all that stuff that goes along with it. Schedules changing daily, sometimes hourly. I think that's that's definitely a lot to manage. And I think we've made some strides, right, from where we were 20 years ago in managing that. But I think there's definitely more work to do. One thing I'd like to maybe get, Nick, we'll start with you on this, but I'd love to go kind of around and get a panelist perspective here. We're talking about present right now. What do you think how has the customer's expectations changed from 20 years ago to today, right? I know, I'll let you think on that for a minute. My perspective is, there's been a vast change in expectations over the past 10, 15, 20 years from customers, from a numerous amounts of different directions and paths. And I would like to explore that question a little bit, maybe give some value to the attendees on maybe just some differences that you've seen from your perspective from 20 years ago to today. Nick, would you mind starting us there?
Sure. I mean, I think the customer expectation has changed greatly from the fact of the quality standpoint. There's an expectation of, delivering superior quality on every job. It's easy to give reviews on when you don't do well. So, having your internal team be aware of like delivering every day is really important. To the time you turn around either a bid or a site audit or RFIs to change orders, those time cycles have, the expectation is shortened, right? Like prime example is we used to do an RFI out in the field on the paper, come back to the office, scan it, email it in. We're doing that through a system on our iPad now where we can have a superintendent on site marking up a plan set. And at the same time, someone in the office is already building that change order on the information that's coming from those markups. And the clients are expecting us to turn that around quicker. So time efficient and speed, that's definitely a high priority. And then I think the other thing that it kind of came out of the pandemic, like just what we're doing today, leveraging technology with Teams meetings and Zoom and being able to pop on using that technology more frequently has helped, solve the geographic boundaries of having to travel. I have operations in Dallas, Houston, Austin. I can have meetings readily with those teams versus with being able to see them and share screens and solve problems quicker. It's helped us provide better service to our clients.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I actually hadn't thought of. A lot of the technology has eliminated some of the windshield time that maybe we would have had to have incurred before, which just productivity wise drags down your day tremendously. But I think those are great thoughts, Nick. Love to get your perspective on this, Jordan, from a customer perspective, then versus now.
Yeah, absolutely. I do agree with Nick. Post-pandemic, or even during the pandemic, right? There were a large amount of the customer base that was working from home. And so the amount of scrutiny that was put into the products that we were delivering was really heightened. So you had people that were at home, and at least on the maintenance side of the business, when the crews are on site, they're peeking out the window, looking at the crew and exactly what they're doing. And they haven't necessarily had that sort of like scrutiny on them before. So that has created a lot higher expectation, but they a lot of times don't want to increase the amount of budget. So they want a much better product for the same budget that they've had for the last 5 years. In addition to that, the way that they want to be communicated with, to Nick's point, they want communication and they want it now. They want to be able to see, you know, service visit reporting after you're there. They want to be able to see what you're going to do the next time you're there. If they make a phone call or an email, the sense of urgency and their expectation and response times has greatly increased. So I think that has provided a lot of the technology that's come out of the last several years is how do we meet that demand from the customer? And really making sure that we're communicating with them in a way that provides accountability and transparency so that they can see, right? I mean, putting a GPS locator on a truck, for example, you would have a customer potentially that would say, hey, your crew has not been to my HOA today, right? Our service day is on Thursday, but with the technology that we have, you can actually pull up and say, hey, our crew was on site. They parked here. They spent 3.5 hours on the property. And then you can take pictures and you can create service visits forms that you can send back to say, this is exactly what we did today. That technology didn't exist years ago. Like I said, that provides accountability and transparency on both sides of the table.
Yeah, it sounds like customer expectations are evolving just as quickly as technology is as well. So I think they're in a race
Absolutely.
to keep up with one another for sure. No, that's well said, Jordan. We're going to pause real quick. We'll pop up our second poll of our session here real quick. And by all means, if you have any additional questions, you can drop them in the chat and we'll take care of them in our Q&A session. Glenn, definitely want to move over to you and get your perspective on this. Just, I know you've just, I think we've known each other for 15, 20 years in itself. And I know you've had varying levels of leadership responsibility. How have you seen that customer expectation change over the years?
Yeah, I mean, quality is always, you know, it's the customer wants quality, right? I mean, just think about it at home, right? If you're buying something, you want it to work or you want it to be good when it's done. So, but I think the expectation is it keeps getting faster, right? And ultimately, you know, the customer wants to be able to communicate with us. Maybe it's a concern, maybe it's, you know, an issue, right? Or they need something taken care of. And, you know, whether that's some of the, I'll call it like portal, you know, you got some customers now that might have a portal that says, hey, I'm going to enter something, and then they kind of want to monitor that it gets done. There's technology out there today where, you know, I'll say the public, but others can report out on issues, right, and post it to places, and it ultimately gets to us. So there's so many more eyes, right? It's not just the customer and the landscaper that's showing up. There's a lot of people that are, you know, either enjoying the landscape or also looking at it. And you know, I think that's the fun thing about our industry, right? I mean, you know, in Nick's case, right, he gets to build cool things and see it come out of the ground, you know, and ultimately for the rest of us, we might just be, you know, making sure it stays pretty once it's in the ground. And it's the first thing you see when you pull up to a building, and you know, that customer wants to look real good. But the other interesting thing is the technology for that customer's brought is, I try to kind of wrap my head around like training, right? You know, ultimately, Nick said it, right? We're eliminating windshield time, right? Can you train or can you troubleshoot, you know, remotely nowadays? And, you know, whether that's a, you know, a pruning item or an install item. And I think the customer's expectations are valid. They're good, right? They continue to expect good quality for what they're buying. And technology's probably allowed it to continue to be phased in and happen. So.
Yeah, no, well said. Well said. Maybe just a pivot now. We kind of covered, right, the difference between past versus present. Let's maybe move our way towards a little bit towards the future. But first, I'd maybe like to talk a little bit about, you know, what problems exist today, right? So where we're at today versus where we want to be 10, 15, 20 years ago, as it relates to business management, systems, software, processes, everything that encompasses. And so maybe Jordan, I'll lean on you to kind of get us started there. What gaps are you seeing, or what issues are you seeing that aren't solved today, from maybe where we stand today to where we want to go?
Sure. So the first place that I will start, even though I love sales the most, is I'm actually going to start on the operation side, is labor. So labor, as Nick mentioned, it's hard for every single one of us in the industry. Finding folks to want to do the type of work that we have, it's really hard. And some of us utilize the H-2B program, some of us do not. However, that's not a guarantee. So in the future, there are products that are coming out, autonomous mowers, some that can weed beds for you, some that can edge for you or weed eat for you. The robotic mowers with someone, like a robotic like on a slope, right? That type of mower have been around for a while, but these new systems that are coming out that could potentially, let's just say mow an area for you without having a person on a mower. We are very quickly trending in that way, which I do think is a benefit for our industry to potentially save on labor and or be able to have alternatives in just finding ways to be able to produce the amount of work that's out there as the labor force continues to dwindle. Now on the sales side, there are so many things coming at us in the future that are going to potentially change it. I believe Glenn and Nick both spoke about, right? Open APIs. When you find a system that really works for you, you want that system to be able to talk to and communicate with another system that works well for you. And to have that seamless flow of communication all the way through to your back end systems for, your accounts receivable and your accounts payable. All of that needs to flow together. And those systems are quickly coming together and realizing that they do have to be able to talk. So, I see that these new autonomous tools are going to be extremely important for us on the labor side of the business, and figuring out how we use those to make ourselves more effective and efficient and do a great job. And then where we have more complexity on our different job sites, we take those folks that have been with us and that are still willing to do that type of labor and put them on those type of job sites. So I'm excited for the technology that's coming. I think it's going to be exciting. It's going to have a lot of great tools. Some are going to be better than others naturally, but there's going to be a lot of opportunities for businesses to take advantage of to make themselves either more profitable, more efficient, or both.
Yeah, no, that's greatly said there, Jordan. My question, maybe another question to you would be, there's great opportunity for those companies that take advantage. What is the repercussions of not taking advantage of it? I know that's a big question, but any initial thoughts there?
Right. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I do think that companies that decide to shy away from the technology that's coming into the industry will see that it creates a problem for them. The folks that are going to be early adopters are going to be the ones that figure it out quickly, and have the opportunity, right? If you're more profitable and you're saving a lot of money on labor, and you're able to reinvest into that autonomous equipment, you're going to be able to quickly rise, right? Let's just call it on the top 100 list. You're going to move up really quickly. You're going to be able to figure out that, hey, this autonomous mower can mow this, whatever the production rate is on that, make sure that it's doing a great job. You can have one person that can ride around and check the quality, make sure that things are still running properly. Those types of mowers come with all sorts of back end systems where you can check them and what they're doing if one is stopped or whatever. But the repercussion of not being willing to invest in it is is going to hurt some folks.
Yeah, it seems like, I mean, just initial look at it, it seems like the gap would be created quicker and become larger for those that do adopt versus don't adopt. And I don't necessarily think it has to be adopt everything that comes out. I don't think that's a good strategy, right? But
Correct.
maybe to Glenn's point, just looking at like every business is a little unique, but what problems are your crews facing that are actually getting the work done? And then is there maybe a solution or two out there that could help enable them to do better work on a day-to-day basis?
For me or
Awesome.
for Glenn?
No, I was just more of making a comment.
Statement.
Just off,
Okay.
yeah, just off what you were saying and tying it back to what Glenn was mentioned. But we can certainly go to Glenn. Would love to get maybe your feedback, Glenn, on maybe some gaps that exist from like where we are today versus, you know, where we need to be from a future standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, I think gap wise, I mean, that's a pretty big question, right? I think ultimately it again comes back to we work in the outdoors, right? I mean, our teams do, right? If I'm thinking about my team member, my crew that's delivering the work, and how do we deliver, right? How do we provide service? And you know, in Florida, right? I mean, I think it was 100 degrees for over a month, you know, and we have to find a way to motivate our team members, and adopting or introducing technology, right? Spending the money on it. And that's around equipment. And I think back to, you know, the days where it's like, okay, who can carry the most mulch bags, you know, was the, you know, I don't know, the strongest guy or the best team member, right? But at the end of the
That
day,
wasn't me, Glenn, just so you know. I was not carrying the most.
right? But today it's more about how do we get the mulch to the right place, maybe the quickest with technology, you know?
Yeah.
So I think about it from that way, whether you're adopting, you know, some kind of autonomy in the equipment, or just equipment that helps it get there is very important. And I think with regards to, you know, call it technology in the office or with business management, again, you have to look at it and adopt it. Just because, you know, Glenn's been here for 25 years and it might be in his head, that's not a sustainable practice. And we have to get it so that it's there, so that either, you know, the next generation, if you want to call it, a landscapers, right, they have that information, they're able to make business decisions for their team members and ultimately and for their customers. So I think when you think about gaps, I look at, you know, it's got to be ease of adoption or ease of implementation, and it's got to be meaningful, you know, so that they can walk away and they know that they've made an impact. Everybody likes to think, if you use red, yellow, green, everybody likes to see things go from red to green. And, you know, so I think that's important. So I would say probably your gaps are in just like the ease and being able to adopt, or what technology do you bring to the service delivery team to really make the products.
Yeah, I think that's well said. Some simplicity is certainly key here. We're going to pull up our last poll here of our time together. It's hard to believe we've almost been at it 40 minutes, but please interact with the poll. And by all means, if you have any questions, you can drop them into the chat. We'll take care of those questions here in about 5 minutes. Really want to maybe have you, Nick, round us out on maybe talking through some of those gaps. And then I've really got one final question post that I want to get everybody's viewpoint on.
Sure. I think the gaps, we've talked a lot on this call about the frontline team members and the automation, and we're looking at all that. But I think gaps I can see is, you know, we're working really hard to be an employer of choice. We're really focused on our culture, and using AI to help improve that, I think is coming, just from the onboarding process, assuring that a new team member comes in our organization and it's a seamless and it's a wonderful experience. Like, you know, we're looking at that. In fact, the other day I was actually working on a job description for a new job and a new market we're entering. And you know, I actually used AI. Actually wrote the whole job description for me, which is something that I would have worked with HR and spent half a day doing. We did in 30 minutes, or the AI did in 30 minutes, and it was a wonderful description. It went up that day. I already have applicants. Like, it was such a streamlined process. So it's the willingness. I think the big gap is the willingness to embrace it. You know, I'm fortunate. Oscar and Jerry Maldonado, they're early adopters in technology. They encourage us to be proactive in it. So we've been really blessed in our organization with that. And just, you know, I'm also the same guy. I had to go to my kids and say, what do these 3 letters on this text mean? And they're helping me be a little more hip, I guess. But, you know, it's here, and we have to embrace it. And it's going to change how we do business everywhere. And from culture to production, production's only going to improve. And it's a great thing for our industry, especially with the shortage of team members, quality team members to come do the work we do. So it's really exciting time in our industry.
Yeah. What AI were you using on that job description, Nick? Unless you don't want to give all away your secrets.
No, I'll lift the hood. I was using Chat GPT. So
Awesome. That's good. I'm of the same school. I've done a couple job descriptions on that as well. You always need to double check it, right? You know, but when it comes out, but it's pretty incredible. Like, if your prompt is well structured on that, what you get out. I mean, it kind of goes back to what Glenn said, garbage in, garbage out. So if you've got a good prompt going in, it's pretty incredible what can come out the back end and the time that it can save you. You mentioned, right? Like, you know, that job description up the same day. And I remember, you know, past lives where that might be like a 3 or 4 day thing, just to get one up and out and approved and done. So that's good to hear. That's really good to hear. Awesome. So moving to our last question, and I think this is probably where our panelists or our attendees can get a lot of value from our panelists today. And really the main question is maybe let's talk through some factors that landscape business owners or just general leaders in the actual business should keep in mind when they're evaluating a business management software for their company. I'd like to maybe talk through maybe what key important points would be for you as panelists, and maybe top of mind when you're evaluating things. So Jordan, I'd love to start with you and get your perspective on this, and then we can go around the horn here.
Absolutely. So when I think about the business management, right, from a day-to-day, the most important thing is to have a system that you can work with that's going to carry your business, right, all the way through the prospecting of your sales, all the way into your estimating, into the takeoff, then into your proposal that you put in front of the customer. And then that information being easily translated over to your crew leader and to your production team so that they understand what is within the scope of work that's to be performed. Outside of that, after it moves from the proposal and it's already approved, your crew leaders are out there making sure that it can move into your accounting system, whatever that might be, and be billed properly and correctly to the right either email address or to the right PO box. Those things have to flow really seamlessly, and making it easy for folks to use is so important. One of the things that I have found is that there are some really great products out there for CRM for a sales team. A lot of those tools don't exist in one platform, right? You end up having to put multiple platforms together to get exactly what you're looking for. So as far as business management goes, that's one of the most important things, is to have the backbone of your company running off of a system that's easy to use and can take you all the way through the process. In addition to that, one of the things that Glenn mentioned that is so super important is the adoption rate of those people that you have working for you, right? So if you have a new system that you decide to introduce to all of your employees, and they are resistant on the adoption of that particular system, it will fail, right? So making sure that you get the buy-in from the folks that are going to be utilizing the system is extremely important as well.
Yeah, that might be one of the biggest ones I've heard, Jordan, there. That last point that you
Yeah.
made, the buy-in and adoption is key, because you'd hate to go into something, spend the money, and then it not be utilized. And so that's super
Yeah.
important. I appreciate those thoughts. Glenn, would love your perspective on this just in general. So what factors should leaders of their companies be thinking about when evaluating a business management software system?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I would add much to what Jordan said. If anything, I would just hit on maybe two main points. And I think the first one is making sure like you kind of know, or you have an objective or a problem that you're trying to solve. And as Jordan mentioned, my problem would be, hey, from start to finish, right, all the way from, hey, we sold the job to it got delivered to it was estimated before it was delivered, and then ultimately you were able to invoice it and collect. And then so understanding what is the problem that you want to solve, I think you got to be real clear on that, and that's where that buy-in comes in. And I think the last piece is just around being able to I'll use the word monitor, right, or measure where your key points in that process that you want to be able to make visible, so that either one, you have the adoption, or maybe you have a spot that you need to kind of polish and make a little bit better. So I think otherwise Jordan's pretty much kind of laid that out in pretty solid fashion.
Awesome.
Thank you, Glenn. Hey, Shawn, one thing that I did forget to add on to a crucial piece of the adoption for the folks that you have potentially working with a new system is the training. So your folks are not going to adopt a system that they are not well trained on. So having some support in training and making sure that there's ongoing training when questions come up is also very, very important and critical to the adoption rate.
Yeah, that's awesome input there. I think, they need to be bought in, but they also need to be trained up on the platform. So it's ease of use there for sure.
That's right.
That's good. Nick, anything to add to what Glenn and Jordan had said to date?
Yeah, I think both Glenn and Jordan, hit a lot of the points right on the head. I think what I would add would be kind of the real time measuring, like, and Glenn was talking about having that real time data where you can see how a job's performing. Where are we on those hours versus budget? Is there a challenge in this job? How can we get ahead of that and solve it? So for us, we're always looking to how we can get better data real time, day to day. Back to you, I think you had mentioned earlier, you should be approving time daily, like, all those things, like that makes a huge difference in the operation, but also not only from like a branch manager or a level where they're looking at just what their world is, but from my side where I'm managing 4 or 5 locations, seeing how all they're doing, it creates a competitive environment to see who's the best right now. And so I think that real time for a leadership team and those matrix is a huge part. And I've been part of some software rollouts where the implementation was not well thought out, and to touch on Jordan's thoughts on being trained and the adoption by your team, that's a huge part. Like that should be always discussed when looking at a new software, and like what that looks like and how much time is going to take on that, and what the end result is when you get to that go live date. That's what you measure the success on. And then the last thing is just everything should be in one place. That's what we're working towards in our organization. We're eliminating the variety of platforms to be in a system that is start to finish. So those are the 3 pieces I feel are crucial to a software.
Awesome. Well said. Well thought out there, Nick. I greatly appreciate that. Well, it's been a great conversation. I think we've covered a lot of ground. We'll move over to our Q&A section, but prior to doing that, we'd like to just introduce our attendees to Attentive Accelerate. So we'll pull up our deck here and we'll go to the next slide. and really want to introduce Attentive Accelerate, which is Attentive's business management end-to-end software. There's numerous solutions and numerous pinch points in current workflows on the screen. We just have a few here. Your sales process, is it still manual? Do you have manual takeoffs? Are you creating proposals manually? Are they leaving that with a lack of time and lack of visibility to sales pipeline? On your operations side, are there multiple blind spots? There's a lot of complexity that goes into that operations and production management workflow. So, over time, do you have visibility to that? Are you managing ghost clock-ins in your organization? Do you have a clear line of sight to your service quality as well? And then lastly, but not leastly, your revenue is not tracked on time. So are your accounting teams working to constantly fix things and have manual entries and having to drop things out of the system, do them in Excel and upload them back into the system? Just a lot of different problems with current workflows and processes in companies today. So we've worked to develop an end-to-end platform called Attentive Accelerate, really with the mantra and the edict that because tech should be simple, we want some simplistic platform that allows you to move fast. And you can get a clean look here of our modular architecture for Accelerate and what that entails. We won't go through each one, but this gives you a look at what's a comprehensive look at Attentive Accelerate. Would love to connect with you if you have an issue that you're working to solve in your business. Would love to book some time with you. You can certainly scan this QR code to book a demo with our team. I'm pretty confident I'll be on that call as well. So it would be great to be able to connect with anyone that wants to chat business and talk about what Attentive Accelerate can do for them. So we'll leave this up on the screen here for a few more seconds so everybody can scan the QR code as needed. And let's move over to our question and answer period. So Nick, I think the first question is really catered towards you and your experience. And really this question is, how has your vendor management changed over the years, specifically with managing the longer term projects where bidding to install can take 12 to 18 months, and I would argue even longer sometimes?
That's a great question. It's dynamically changed for us. One of the big focuses, especially when we had all the supply chain issues, vendor relationships has always been critical. Seeing what the market's going to do and what they're seeing. But for us, we've changed our whole procurement process side. That was a big initiative for us like 3 years ago. And we spent a lot of energy in each market. Our large markets actually have their own purchasing agent where we're RFQing jobs as soon as we get the contracts. We're POing those jobs so that we know that material is going to be available for when it goes operational on the field. So that way we're ensuring we're delivering for our clients in a timely manner. And some of that was negotiations with our vendor partners. We've worked really hard over our last 35 years and have great relationships, but we've made partnerships that are wins for them and us, from our rebate programs to how they're going to help us on our billing terms. It's been a big piece in this because we're actually POing these things so early. There's a lot of things, but it's really starting that dialogue with your vendors was our biggest thing. And then internally, we shifted our whole process on how we approach those the procurements and vendor relationships.
Awesome. No, I appreciate that feedback, Nick. Maybe another question. I'll go to you first on this, Glenn, and then Jordan, take your inputs post Glenn. Question is, what would you recommend for a small business owner to be on the lookout for in terms of implementing a software solution, and with the caveat of going from more of a pen and paper to more of a tech-based solution? And before I direct that to you, Glenn, I will say just my conversations over the past 14 months with a lot of landscape companies, you're in the majority here in regards to going from pen and paper to a software or tech-based solution. Part of my question back to Jordan when we were talking about what are the disadvantages of not taking advantage of tech was really orchestrated around that fact, and what I've actually seen out in the marketplace of, there's a lot of people that aren't taking advantage of it. So Glenn, any thoughts here to that specific question?
Yeah, I mean, I think, when you first look at it, it's looking for the solution that, um, fits many of your needs, right? I mean, I think to look for a solution that fixes one, thing, and then have to go look for two or three more, um, starts to become, a challenge, right? Both, I guess, mentally, physically, but also, financially, because you don't just turn something on and have it cut and paste over, right? So I think that's important. And then, ultimately, again, you look at something it's right for you, right for your team, that solves the objective that you're trying to solve, and then, that makes the most sense. And it, it's kind of vague, but I think at the same point in time, if you go after it with that mindset, there's a lot of options out there. Finding an option that is, maybe landscape specific might be a good place to start too. But again, just make sure it meets the needs of your business, and ultimately covers, more than just one discipline within your business.
Awesome. Well said, Glenn. I appreciate that. I think that's the goal, right, of some of these Q&As. Like maybe we don't have like a specific answer because we don't know everything about these individual businesses because everything's a little unique, but like the framework of how we think about the solution could certainly translate to those other businesses. So Jordan, any additional inputs to that particular question?
No, I think Glenn hit it right on the nail on the head. There is look for something that will cover your business holistically, right? And not just one part of it. I think for a small business owner that's moving from pen and paper to a new technology product, cost is going to be extremely important for that person. You don't want to buy specifically off of cost, right? Because that old adage, right? You get what you pay for, but you definitely do need to find a product that fits within your cost structure. And then outside of that, when you do find the right platform that covers the majority of your business, let's just say, you have to think about what are you going to do after you purchase that product, right? What is the implementation going to look like? What kind of tools or people are you going to need during the implementation process? That is a piece that a lot of people don't think about until after the product is already purchased. Implementation is huge. If you don't implement it correctly from the very beginning, you start using that product with the garbage in, garbage out type of mentality. So implementation, making sure that you have someone on your team that knows how to implement a new software product, would go a long way.
Yeah, well said. I think once you make the decision that this might be the right BMS for you, right? Then the conversation in my mind immediately switches to what does implementation look like? What does training look like? What does support look like? When something goes wrong, who am I calling? Where are they at? Are they going to pick up the phone? I mean, honestly, it's not a lot different than what our customers want from us in the landscape industry, right? There's a lot of similarities there. I think we can draw on for sure. Well said. I appreciate that input, Jordan and Glenn. I think we have time for maybe one more question. And if we can, I'd like to do a quick round robin here. What concerns did you have before switching to AI, or let's say technology as a whole, a piece of technology you use, so to AI and tech, and has your position changed on it since you started using it? So Nick, I know you've utilized AI in several different factors. Any specifics to that question?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and I think the reality is, you know, I've always been an early adopter on things, so I think just diving into it, like, you can't be scared of it. It's here. I mean, it's being used in anywhere from the medical field to reading radiology charts, all the way to obviously the landscape industry now. There should be no concerns. It's the same as when we had the two-way Nextel talk radios that all the guys loved, and now we have iPhones, and it's just really dive into it, explore it, figure out how it can help your business opportunity out there, and enjoy it, because it's here to stay. It's not going anywhere, and we all have to embrace it and use it to help grow our organizations.
Great, great. Glenn, any initial final thoughts there?
No, I mean, I think everything, starts somewhere, right? And it continues to get better, whether it's, the first, measurements that might have been done via AI, right? And ultimately, where they're at today. So, to Nick's point, you gotta embrace it, you gotta dive into it, and just understand that, it'll continue to improve. So no, that's
Yeah.
it.
Okay. Jordan, wrap us up here. Any final thoughts on making that
Sure.
change? And
So for me, right, like I love people, and I love to help people get to where they want to go in life. And I think one of my initial hesitations when it comes to either AI or automation in the field is making sure that we don't lose sight that people think that AI is going to replace their job, right? And we need to make sure that they still feel comfortable in their job, and in the fact that even if we find a way to make things more efficient, that they still have a home, right? That is the most important piece while we are continuing to dive into technology and all of these other automated systems. Is how do we make our people feel like they are the most important piece, because they are. And that for me was my initial hesitation around it. But I do know that both of those things can exist in a parallel universe. You can have AI and automation, and you can still keep the really best people on your team at the same time. So that's what I think that we as a green industry have to ensure, that we continue to take care of our people and build a culture so that we get the very best talent continuing to come into this organization. What the green industry used to be thought of as a blue collar type of industry. And now with all of these advances in technology, there are some different roles that are going to be needed that we don't have today, right? Like computer science type of things, people that can work really well with building the infrastructure behind how they keep those, in a cloud-based platform. Those aren't things that we've had in this industry in the past. And so there's a lot of opportunity coming, in addition to, like the sort of scary part of how could AI or automation take away jobs. But in addition to that, there will be new jobs needed. So that's kind of how I think that we all as leaders need to think about taking care of our people, making sure that they feel comfortable as we introduce new technology, and do our very best to bring in the best talent to take on the new tech that we have.
awesome. Thanks for wrapping us up, Jordan. Those were great points. Jordan, Nick, Glenn, you three are all stars. I greatly appreciate you contributing to the industry today and having a conversation with me. I know we didn't get to all the questions on the list. My apologies to the attendees, but certainly appreciate the time today. And it's been great spending some time with you. I hope everybody has a great Thursday afternoon. Take care.
Thanks so much, Shawn.
Thanks, Shawn.
Thank you.